problem at all.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I've just pushed record because I have this awful problem of forgetting to push record. So we are now recording this blab, so other people who can't join in can watch it later. So, Mark, you are the founder of interrelated.co.uk, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
And you're here today to give us a little bit about personal branding. So before we crack on, can you just tell us what personal branding is?
Can I just start by explaining what interrelated is, and then I'll...
Yeah, absolutely. Go on then.
Just to establish a little bit of context for me. I mean, I've been in the business of creating brands and producing brands for well over 25 years now. I've worked with very large organisations, and I also work with smaller businesses. And I basically, brand is everything that interests me. It's at the heart of what I do professionally, and I believe it's hugely important to everything that we're all involved in, and the reason why we do what we do. And that obviously applies right the way through to a personal level. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I have for quite some time taken a keen interest in the whole area of personal branding. But my business, Interrelated, is fundamentally about selling strategic branding. That's our identity.
Right, yeah.
And you can find us at .co.uk, as you say, interrelated.co.uk.
I'll type that in so everybody can see it. It's Interrelated.
Yeah, so we work with mostly B2B and helping businesses think about, what do they stand for, how do they position themselves in their marketplace, not just the corporate brand, but also their, just recognise Beiju's face jumping up all over the place.
Beiju's joined us.
I think that's Matt as well. We help people think about not just their business, their corporate brand, but also their products, their services, how they get them in front of people. So that's my business. That's where I come from. A few years ago.
How long have you run Interrelated?
We kind of really kicked off at tail end of 2009, but really kicked off in 2010. Prior to that, I worked as an independent consultant, trading under my own name, but I called myself Mark Wing, talked about creating marks of excellence, and I spelt Mark, M-A-R-Q-U-E, so which some of you might know is another word for a brand. So we talked about creating marks of excellence. So I did that for a few years prior to setting up Interrelated. And then before that, I worked in very large branding businesses. I've worked both as a digital brand strategist. I've worked in culture change programs with large organizations. And in my earlier days, I worked for big leading design agencies in central London, parts of WPP, Omnicom, that sort of thing, big well-known brands. And I've worked on a whole range of large international branding projects that some of them are very much around today, which I'm quite proud of. So
that's good. Okay, then. So I've typed that into the sidebar. So if anybody's not sure how this works, you can ask questions. So type your questions in the chat, and I can ask those to Mark. I'm going to be asking Mark some questions for about 30 minutes, and then we will unlock the seats. So anybody wants to jump on and speak to Mark directly, yeah. So they're going to fire those questions at you, Mark. Okay.
All right, excellent.
So we've got quite a few people watching this, and as you can probably notice, quite a few familiar faces. So that's always nice. So you got your audience. Okay then. So let me know what a personal brand is then, please, Mark, and how different it is to a business brand, if there's any difference.
Yeah. What is a personal brand? I mean, what is a brand? A brand is an idea, an understanding that we might have in our head about something that we value. I always talk about a brand being a promise, and there are lots of different definitions. But I mean, I had a quick play around, and if you, I mean, anyone can do this. If you go into Wikipedia, and just sort of say what is a personal brand, it will tell you that it's just kind of really about how people market themselves. And I think that traditionally people have thought about, well, if I market myself, is it about self-improvement? Is it about the way in which I improve what I do in the marketplace? Well, that's perhaps a part of it, but it's actually about how you package yourself up as well. I think it's important to realize that personal branding isn't necessarily a new phenomenon. I think it was a chap called Tom Peters who wrote a book, a brand called You. Do you remember that? Do people remember that? A brand called You?
Maybe
it was about 10 years ago. Yeah, it was about 10 years ago, and I think it was kind of Tom Peters.
I'll put that in the chat. Okay.
Well-respected strategist, but I think it's really kind of the emergence of the whole kind of internet phenomenon that's made personal branding so much a spoken about subject, something that everybody wants to take very seriously. But the concept of a personal brand isn't a new thing, and even it's not wasn't born 10 years ago when Tom Peters wrote his book. There have been many people through the years who've referred to it. But I think if you just think back to kind of through your history books and just think about anyone who wanted to promote themselves and be known for something, they effectively were developing a personal brand. If you were a shepherd, you'd be known as the shepherd who lives down the road, or if you're a blacksmith, you'd be known as the blacksmith who's in that building down there making all that noise. And that's an interesting thing, kind of the blacksmith making all that noise. It's just kind of, I think about any brand, it's about kind of what are the recall triggers, what are the things that make us think about that promise that I referred to. And the trick for us as individuals, if we're looking to build a personal brand, is to identify what would be those recall triggers that would actually help, as I say, trigger in people's minds a memory of what it is that you promised to give them.
So do some people have a brand without even realizing it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question and a really important point for us to get out really quickly. Every single person sitting on this call, listening to this blab, out there in the world today, has a personal brand, whether they realize it or not. Some people might have a personal brand that perhaps is somewhat off the radar, but we all have a personal brand, whether it's just simply how our wife or our husband thinks of us, or how we behave as a parent perhaps, and how our children associate our values with who we are as a parent, right the way through to, as you increase your sphere, your universe, then obviously kind of we start to move, and I think most people on this call will be interested in the fact that it's kind of like how you relate to the people you work with. Now, if you're an employee, it'll be the people that you work at, the team you're in. Maybe if you're a leader of a team, it'll be the way the people in those teams relate, your people that relate to you and what you stand for and the values that you bring to that. Now, those values might be driven or predicated around a product or a project that you're working together on as a team, but it's very much the driving force of the individual, the personal traits of the individual that will shape the culture that's built up around that. Right the way through to if you own your own business. I imagine there's quite a few people on the call who probably run smaller businesses, maybe sole traders or small teams of anything from 2 to 10 people perhaps. But it's the individual, and quite often it's the personal brand of that individual that founded or runs the business that attracts the customers to the business. They're coming because of the capabilities, the strengths, the reputation that person has, and the people that work for that person are joining the business because of those same capabilities, strengths that they want to be associated with and they want to build on themselves.
So would a personal brand then be regarded, if somebody was always late, would that be part of their branding? If somebody was always nice, would that be part of their branding? If somebody was very rigid in everything they've done, would that be part of their branding?
So yeah, what you're talking about there is personality traits, and yes, personality traits are an extremely important part of branding. There are probably I was having to think about this. There's a again, you can do a little Google search on this. I've got a Twitter handle, by the way. I mean, yes, I run a business called Interrelated and so on, but actually I've been very interested in personal branding, and I did actually run and do have a sort of a focus on personal branding. And I've got a Twitter account, Personal B Co UK. That's literally the word personal, the letter B, and then COUK.
COUK.
Yeah, that's right. So it was built around the idea of a website of personalb.co.uk, but it's not got the dots on the Twitter.
Okay, personalb.co.uk. Yeah,
that's it. Now, I mean, if you're on Twitter and you want to just pick up on that, you'll find a few of the links that I might refer to here in that Twitter handle, because I've posted a few just before we came on this call. There was one that was about the 5 personality traits, and there are 5 personality traits that have been identified. The first one is kind of the degree of openness to experiences that you might have. Now, each of these traits can then be broken down into a matrix of many, many different ways of looking at it. The second one is your conscientiousness, which might pick up on some of the things you've talked about there, the degree to which you're always late and so on. A third one would be your extroversion, and then that's kind of like in terms of breadth rather than depth. The fourth one is agreeableness, and the fifth one is neuroticism. and those 5 kind of, if you like, the sort of big 5 personality traits are ways in which you might group the ways in which someone might behave. But simply answering your question is yes, your personality traits will shape something about who you are. But I think one of the things I keep picking up is lots of people are so worried about how they're perceived that they sort of believe that their personality traits have somehow got to be this kind of perfect person, that actually, unless they're doing everything brilliantly according to the world of whoever, I don't know, then they're failing in some way. And I think it's really important that, you know, if we're always late, so be it. You know, that's who we are.
Yeah.
Make it a charming characteristic of who you are. Don't worry. Yeah, don't worry about it and say, you know, go into your job interview and say, the trouble is, you don't really want to employ me because I'm always late. What you want to do is go in there and say, I learned a long time ago, I'm always late for things, so I always make sure I book in half an hour early, so don't you be late. Or whatever, you know, and just make a joke of it. But I mean, I'm being a bit frivolous, but I mean, the point is, yes, personality traits do shape who you are. But in really kind of shaping your brand, what you want to do is identify what your strengths are and then build on them. I mean, I'll leave you with 3 key words, if you like. I'm not going to leave you because we've got quite a bit to cover. but I'll just put across 3 key words. They all begin with M. The first is mitigate. The second is manage.
Type these in, Mark, because
you're going to type them in. Are you?
Wrong, yeah.
They all begin with M.
Okay.
The first one is mitigate. The second one is manage, and the third one is master. I just wanted to just leave those with you just now, because I think that they almost are at the heart of everything we're talking about here. You talked about personality traits. You could be talking about the things you value the most. You could be talking about what is it that makes me who I am. I think the thing is to actually identify what you're really strong in, and also identify what you're not so strong in, what you're weak in. And with each of those, kind of mitigate the things that don't build you up, that don't make you, that don't do something positive for who you are.
Yeah.
And then once you've identified what you're aiming to be, then you need to manage that very carefully. One of the things we talk about at Interrelated is we say that a promise, if you could put promise at 12 on a clock and experience at 6, everything is all about how you keep those in alignment. It's about how you align the experience of your brand with the promise that you made. So manage is critical, and then master. It's kind of like, well, just keep getting better at it. And I think that's the other important thing is everybody thinks, well, you know, I am a brand, I'm a personal brand, and somehow I've got to be perfect today. And I don't think that's the case. You know, we decide, the first thing to do is to decide you want to manage your personal brand. You want to establish a personal brand. As I said earlier, we all have a personal brand out there. You could start by just Googling yourself and find out what comes back. Do a little audit on yourself, and you quickly find out how others might perceive you. Maybe you could talk to friends, family, or even work colleagues or clients, and actually sort of do a little survey, ask them the right questions and see what comes back. And it'll start to tell you what your personal brand out there in the ether is, because we all have one, it's all out there.
Yeah.
The trick is actually building on the things that you want to be, you want your reputation to stand for, mitigate against anything that's not going to help make that a success, and manage the process, and then just become a master at it, get better and better. You're not going to be brilliant from day one. Everyone we admire, we look at when they first started, they made lots of mistakes, but somehow they just get better and better until
they grow. They grow into their brand.
They grow into their brands. This little leaflet we talk about growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about then, Mark? Many moons ago, when I first got into the business world, I met this person who was actually giving a talk on personal branding. This was years ago now, and he wore a hat and he wore a red jacket, and he said, "This is my brand." So, is that right? Do you have to wear red scarves and hats and funny shoes? Be part of a brand?
If that's what he says is his brand, maybe. I mean, if you think of Boy George, I immediately think of flamboyant clothes and painted faces, and he used to wear some pretty interesting hats, I think. My immediate answer to that is actually what you're then now beginning to describe is a tribe. I sort of feel that we establish an idea that we want to be a brand. We then sort of think about how we will express ourselves. And if part of being this brand, this personality, and it's all about finding the authentic truths in yourself, by the way. Don't try and be something you're not, because you will fail. So the trick is understanding what is authentic and what is true about you, and then that's the kind of build that up. Now, if an authentic truth about you is you just love to wear hats or crazy things, I don't know if I'm not a big fan of these property shows on TV, but what's her name? Is it Kirsty?
Kirsty Allsop.
Yeah, I think she's a lovely lady. Do you know, you get those moments, sometimes they just show, I'm not sure whether she knows she's on film, but she's kind of like in the garden, the people are looking around the house, and she's doing a little pirouette, or she's jumping on the trampoline that was really there for the kids. She's not a small lady. She's
an honest clown.
She's just being herself.
Yeah, that's
nice.
nice.
That's what makes her so charming, I think. Yeah. And it's that kind of...
Some people will love that and some people won't like it.
It doesn't matter. She's comfortable in herself, and that's the important thing. And if you're comfortable in yourself wearing flamboyant hats and wonderful scarves, that's great. Now, if you admire somebody who wears fancy hats and comfortable scarves, or whatever I said a moment ago, then if you admire them so much that you want to emulate them in some way, then you might choose to wear what they wear. And that's why I say, well, then you're becoming part of their tribe.
Yes.
And I think what we need to know when we're developing our own personal brand is we want to be a leader, not a follower.
Absolutely. Can I just butt in there, Mark, for one second? That reminds me, I don't know if anybody is about my age on this blab, but when Adam Ant was like at his peak, I used to walk around with a white stripe across my nose. Do you remember Adam Ant?
Oh, it's brilliant. I love that white stripe. Everyone was doing it, wasn't it?
So I was part of his tribe then, yes?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you want to be a leader when you are creating your personal brand?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what if then, because you said about asking friends and family how they perceive you, what if then you realise actually you don't like what they're saying about your brand, your personal brand? What do you do then?
Well, you don't top yourself. It's like anything in life. It really is about becoming comfortable with who you are. And if people are saying things to you that you don't like about yourself, then there's a big lesson for you to learn. And this is why we talk about, again, I'll go back to mitigate, manage, and then master. if there are a lot of things coming back that you think, I don't like this person, you need to mitigate what it is that you don't like about what's coming back. And you need to say, okay, I've got to learn from this. I've got to stop doing these things. I've got to start doing things differently. But it might be that you just can't. Maybe what everyone's saying to you is things about you that actually it's not so much that, yes, you don't like the way they're coming across, but actually you're quite proud of that part of you. And you need to think, well, how do I make sure it comes across in the way that they will see as positive? And that I can then build on. I mean, I can think of plenty personal brands that many people will detest. My wife detests, probably too strong a word, but Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah.
I think he's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
A lot of blokes are fond of him and a lot of women don't like him.
Yeah.
There's probably plenty of women that do as well. That's fair enough. But what is it that the women that don't like him don't like about him? I think there's probably a number of things you could put your finger on, and a lot of it will probably be to do with his chauvinism. But he can manage that. It doesn't mean he needs to not be chauvinistic, but he can find a way in which he can make that still very appealing. I'm just trying to find an example.
Yeah, so I've got a few people on. I've got Nelson Norfolk on Periscope saying he hates Jeremy.
There you go. He's been a Marmite character, isn't he?
Yeah, love-hate, isn't he?
Yeah.
So if the research come back and your friends and families all say you're too outspoken, we think you're really outspoken, you could actually then sort of manage that in a way that being outspoken is one of your top traits.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to this kind of love and hate thing, we all know Marmite. Marmite, I thought, created a fantastic campaign when they recognised that actually you either love it or you hate it. So we're not in the business of trying to convince everybody that they've got to love our product. We've just got to tell people that we understand this is something you will taste and you will either spit out or you will want more. And I think we need to be a bit like that ourselves. You know, nobody is going to be loved by everybody. And we just need to know who it is that we're in the market for and how best to appeal to them. And so Marmite did that really well. Sorry, I've forgotten your question.
No, I've forgotten it.
I don't know, maybe I was close.
With personal branding then, is it much different to business branding? I mean, with a business brand, do they go in saying, right, this is what we want to achieve? And does personal branding just happen? There
are a lot of similarities, but a business brand obviously is different. And then there's, I mean, even business branding that operates on a variety of different levels. So I often talk about corporate branding, which would be the brand name of the business. And then I might talk about product branding or service branding, which would be obviously the brand, the approach to how we brand our products. And then there are many ways you can do that. They're either kind of like Russian dolls, kind of branded as kind of very clearly belonging to the family of the corporate brand, or they might be quite separate brands. And so there's many ways in which you can approach the world of branding in the corporate world. But at the heart of it, what you're looking to do is understand, as I say, what is the promise that this product or this brand, this business is offering its customers. And an important part of doing that is understanding who are our customers, what is the competitive environment in which we're operating in, how do we, rather than be a follower, become a leader, how do we stand out and do something differently, and how do we, if you like, carve out our niche of the marketplace that we can own, where we can isolate a bit of that matrix that I was kind of drawing there, the X and Y. How do we define the bit that we sit in as our own, and become? We don't want to be one of many, because we're just. It's like being in a room. Everybody's talking. We're talking. We can't be heard above anyone else. we can get up on the stage, but there might be a number of people on that stage and the room is all noisy, and how do we kind of get heard? We might be seen, some people might take interest, but we're just one of a few, if you like. How do we become one of one? How do we actually isolate ourselves? Everyone else is stopping talking and saying, I just want to listen to that one person. Now, the world of corporate branding is about doing that. It's about understanding how do you carve out your niche? How do you stand for something that your audience wants, but how do you make it attractive to them so that it is the preferred product, the preferred offer that's available? In the same way you want to do that for personal branding.
And is it more important these days to have a really good personal brand with the internet and social media? Like, it's so important, more so, to stand out?
I think it's always been important to be comfortable with who you are. It's always been important to understand what works well and what doesn't work well as part of managing how we're comfortable with who we are and how we're received by others. When we're at a dinner party, we've always been, we always want to kind of, it's not so much fit in, we want people to take an interest in what we've got to say. We don't want to be forgotten about and sat in the corner of a dinner party. We want to be a contributor to the conversation at the table. We want to be part of what's going on, and we want people to sort of stop and listen to when we've got something to say. I think that's always been the case. Suddenly, we're not sitting at a dinner party. I'm sitting here on my own in this room, but we're having a conversation, and there's 100 odd people out there, plus perhaps, who are listening in.
Yes.
So, yes, it's sort of.
And what about, Mark, personal branding, where it comes to somebody looking to get employed? How important is that?
I think it's very important. I think that's really kind of where personal branding comes into play. There'll be a lot of people on this call for whom managing their personal brand is really important, because they are, as I say, a sole trader, or they're running a little business, or like yourself, you're building a reputation. You're out there attracting.
I've got a reputation already.
You're becoming a master of your reputation. We're all on a journey, and if you've reached the end, Julie, well done. But somehow I don't think you have.
No.
And as we go along, there's always other lanes we might think of turning up. So we just need to be confident about what that journey is, understanding the map that we're traveling. So there's a lot of people on this call probably for whom managing their personal brand is actually about how they represent and manage their business and their career as a standalone agent. But there might be a lot of people on this call, and there certainly might be a lot who might listen back in on this, and certainly the vast majority of people in the world anyway are probably employees. And within their employed environment, they need to manage their personal brand very carefully, because the quality of their personal brand isn't just about, I've decided I want to be this and I'm going to work really hard that I become this, and then I'm going to manage that. How do we manage this reputation that we want to build? Well, one of the key things we need to do is make sure that we're delivering the projects that are going to build the case studies, that are going to build the reputation, that are going to build the evidence that proves that we can do what we say we do, that makes everybody say, that's the man I want on my team, or that's the woman I want on my team. Because if I look back, in 2014 they did this, 3 months ago they did that, I have confidence that they can deliver. That's about managing your personal brand as much as anything else. It's about saying, there might be things that you're asked to do and you think, well, actually, I don't want my personal brand to stand for that, so I'll just do it badly, or I won't get involved. That's your choice. But I mean, there will be a lot of things that you think, actually, that's exactly what I want to be known for. So you really want to work hard, build that reputation. Now, that's happening very much in the work environment when you're part of someone's team. It's also then when you're thinking, I'm going to go for a new job. And maybe you don't like the company you're in because it's actually not satisfying your ambition as a personal brand, but you've identified a company out there that will really help take you somewhere. Somebody once said to me, it's a bit like building your career and moving through life is a bit like sort of riding horses or something. I never really totally understood the analogy, but it was just this idea of understanding what are the horses you want to ride to get from here to there. And that'll be a person, a mentor, a boss, or it might be a company or a team that you want to be associated with.
I call it strategic job hopping.
Brilliant. That's what you all are all about. Sorry, I just sort of queued that one up for you, Julie.
Thank you. So will having a really good personal brand give somebody the competitive advantage where it comes to the interview process, like above somebody else? So somebody with a good personal brand will probably get the job more than the other person who hasn't. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think one of the advantages of having a good brand, whether it's corporate, product, service, or personal, is that kind of it helps the sales team. It helps you sell yourself. It's kind of like a lot of the hard work has already been done, and I'm sure. I mean, we've all been to interviews. We've all been interviewed. We've all got plenty of experience we can draw on. I'm sure you know those moments when you actually sat in front of somebody having an interview and you're thinking, God, this is going really well. You know, it could be that we just hit it off and we get on really well as people, but it's possibly also they've just done a little bit of research on me and they already know that I can do the things they want me to do. So this is just about getting to know each other, and it just so happens that personality-wise it's a good fit. Suddenly everything's falling into place. If you walk into an interview and they don't know you from Adam, there's a hell of a lot of work that has to be done in terms of proving yourself to them. And sometimes, you know, people don't like it when you sell to them. So sometimes that doesn't work quite so well than if perhaps they'd heard it from somebody who knows you, or they'd read about it online and they came into the room knowing and feeling confident that you can do what you say you, or what they want you to do.
A good personal brand will definitely help.
Absolutely.
So, right, okay then, Mark, if somebody's now thinking, right, okay, I really do need to work on my personal brand, what would you advise? What are your top tips?
Yeah, I was just having to think about this. There's very simply, be clear about what is the image you want to project, and then kind of manage the messages that are associated with you to help deliver that image. Get some evidence, do some things that will prove it, you know, whether it's a project you can refer back to and say, yeah, well, actually, when I worked for this client, or when I did this project, or we did something similar over here, and this is what we learned. And you can be talking from experience. People can see that passion in your eyes because you've got the experience. You're not kind of regurgitating something else. And then if somebody says, just quickly tell me, what is it you stand for? What do you care most about? Just know very quickly and simply, this is what I stand for. This is my very simple way of putting it across. That would be a top tip. I had a quick look around. If you go to that Twitter handle I mentioned, Personal Beco UK, you'll find in there a link to, there were a couple of things I thought were quite interesting, and I should be in the business of promoting my own work here, but I'm just going to, PwC have got kind of like a workbook out there, which I thought was quite interesting. And they talk about, you know, I don't know, what is it, 6 or 7 steps. In fact, almost everybody out there, the first step is kind of just know you want to establish yourself as a personal brand. We've already accepted that from this conversation that everybody has a personal brand, but somehow you kind of just need to step up to it and say, yeah, actually, this is important and I want to do something about it. So then you need to kind of identify what you're strong at, identify what you're not so strong at, what you're weak at, and then kind of mitigate the issues that aren't going to help you. You need to identify the things that you value the most, and these will be linked to the personality traits. And as I said, there's these kind of 5 big personality traits, of which sort of you can start to work out where you fit and what, you know, how people, and you can learn what those are by asking others, as I mentioned earlier on the call. If you ask other people about asking the right questions, find out what you're passionate about. There's a really, I mean, there's so much out there that all kind of lends itself to this, isn't there? But there's a guy out there who you've probably all seen it. He's done a TED talk where he says, look, everybody knows what they do, And a lot of people will probably be able to tell you how they do what they do, but too many people overlook why they do what they do. And his TED talk was all about kind of, let's start with the why. Let's put the why at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of this idea about being a leader rather than a follower. It's kind of being clear, why do I want to be in business? Why do I want to build a personal brand? You know, is it just simply about I want to make more money, or is it actually about I want to stand for something, and I want that thing to be something that has real value. So I mean, there's a few people on this call who I've been networking with quite a bit recently. A few of us, we went to a dinner with Tesla recently. There's a guy called Elon Musk who runs Tesla, and you know, he's really clear at the heart of why he's in business is that he wants to create sustainable transport. You know, he's the man who's creating these electric cars. He's doing much more than that. He's a rocket scientist, and he's finding sustainable ways to try and reach out to space. He's also getting involved in developing solar energy. He is changing the world. He's a really exciting guy. But why? Because fundamentally he knows that the key thing we need to deal with as a planet is managing our resources. There's so few of.
He's passionate about that.
He's absolutely passionate about it. So what's he doing? Well, I mean, he made a lot of money. He made his money. He created PayPal. That's how he made his money. So he's got a lot of money to invest, but he's just throwing all his energy into teaching the world how to sort of move around in a sustainable way. So, you know, he's created this technology that's all about electric cars, but it's not that he wants to make loads of money, so he's holding it all to himself and sort of owning the market. He wants to open it up and get everybody to make electric cars. So he shares all of his intellectual property with everyone. He says, no, come on, get out there and make these electric cars. That's his sole ambition. You know, why, if you look at the why for his personal brand, his sole ambition is to change the world and find a sustainable way to move around.
And he's obviously building a tribe that are also passionate about what he believes in, that will help him change the world. Yeah,
it's that why that's got me sitting here quite passionate about what he's doing. I think it's, you know, and
you're part of his tribe. You're his ambassador preaching his work now, aren't you?
It would appear so. I never thought of myself like that, but...
There you go. You did say something earlier as well with regards to being authentic to your brand. So, and actually I just thought about that and I thought, oh my God, yeah, that is really, really interesting, because if somebody was out there talking about being a vegetarian and then somebody caught them eating a bacon butter, that would be really bad to their personal brand, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so that's why we talk about understand your promise and then make sure you deliver an experience that's in alignment with that promise. As soon as any brand breaks its promise, people go away. So if I just take that illustration again, what we do is we put promise at 12 on a clock and we put experience at 6 on a clock, and everything from 12 to 6 is delivering that promise. Everything from 6 to 12 is strategy. It's about defining that promise. It's a virtuous circle. You can just go round and round. You know, got a promise, experience it, go back for more of that promise. If you don't experience it, the virtuous circle's broken. That's the kind of loyalty loop, if you like, and people will go away. As soon as they see the vegan eating meat, they'll say, well, hang on a minute, I've given up meat all this time, and actually I love meat, and I'm doing it because you told me that's what I need to do, and blow me down, you're not even true to what you say. Authenticity, vital.
Right, I've opened up the seats, Mark, so we've got
I noticed
queuing to ask you questions. Hi, Julian, how are you?
Very well, yourselves?
Oh, absolutely fine. I'll hand you over to Mark. You can ask him all the questions you want.
Hi, Julian.
Hi, Mark. It's not so much of a question. It's just sort of elaborating on. You touched upon some of the stuff that Simon Sinek, who is the guy that says start everything with why, is about, and it's for me his TED talk, the one you spoke about, was about 15 minutes long, and it's probably one of the most influential 15 minutes I listened to about 4 or 5 years ago, and it absolutely fundamentally changed my thought process in terms of how we communicate and the ethos and the cultures of marketing and branding and business and communications. And I think you're right. For me, and I've done a lot of work in terms of branding. I hate the word branding. I think if there's a much better marketeer who can come up with a word than branding. But for me, it's about storytelling. It's about getting your personality and your unique selling proposition out there. And there's so many people who focus purely on about the product, when actually they should be focusing about everything else, sometimes apart from the product. Because, you know, as Simon says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And there's a lot of people out there who really focus on the commodity, and we can all trade and buy commodities, but ultimately the way in which everybody's going now is people are buying stories, they're buying personalities, they're buying individuals. You know, I'm a firm believer that people like to do business with people they know, but they love to do business with people they trust. And how do you build that trust? Well, you build that trust through your branding and your story. But the key to it for me is your values. What are your core values as a person, and how do they replicate that and entwine themselves through your business? And you're right in what you were saying about the vegetarian example. And if your values are, you know, service, trust, loyalty, reward, or whatever your values are, and your customer or your person comes into interface and come into one of your touch points within your business, and they don't get the feeling of your values, then your whole story falls apart. And then the word which, you know, is a massive buzzword at the moment, which is authenticity. How authentic are you? Or is it just a marketing plan to try and adopt people to come towards you? So, you know, I'm a firm believer that it should be about inspiration and not manipulation. We can all manipulate somebody to do something once, but can we inspire people to build a relationship with us and to do ongoing business through ourselves? Because ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a sole trader or you've got your own business, your culture, your ethos, your values, the way in which you walk and talk will have a massive influence on your overall business. And it's massively important that people can feel and resonate all of the things that you would like to do and you'd like to say through the communication. That's before we've even started to talk about your product. Your product is something very different. So, you know, I'm just sort of expanding and touching upon some of the great stuff that, you know, you both were saying earlier on, really.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. I mean, I totally agree with everything you just said there. I'm not sure that we need to work really hard to try and find a new word for the word branding, because I think, you know, it's out there. People know what it is. That would be a waste of time and energy. But I do take your point. It's like so many of these words, they get overused and then they kind of start to lose meaning. But I think storytelling is, you know, we talk a lot about telling stories. So I think that's absolutely right. And what you've touched on there, and it goes to the heart of this, the why thing, it goes to the heart of what you were saying there about kind of inspiring, not manipulating, is that actually if we tell stories, if going back to your subject here, Julie, if you're in an interview and somebody is looking for some of this proof, is trying to understand, okay, you say you stand for this, or this is the job we need to do, and what we just need is just a little bit of confirmation that you've done this before, that you know how to approach it. We need to know that you're not going to be flapping around getting a bit confused on how to tackle this subject. Immediately you start telling stories. I worked for this, or I did this project, or we did the following. These were the issues we grappled with, and this is how we solved them. Suddenly a story is positioning your brand in the way that nothing else can.
Yeah, and with businesses using story to market themselves, it is, I find, emotionally connecting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the buzzword. Everybody talks about telling stories. Some people do it very well, and some people haven't really totally understood what the art of telling stories is. I'm sure Julian does a lot of that, and I think it's a very exciting way to build brands. The other thing that, Julian, you touched on there was the importance of values. Values is perhaps a slightly difficult one in terms of personal brand. Creating values for corporations, for products, is a process of talking with people and engaging with others who aren't emotionally connected to it, and finding what are the things that we collectively believe we can build on that will help us be emotionally connected to this business or to this product. If you're talking to an individual, it's a bit harder to kind of pin down the words that somehow represent their values, I think, because it's so emotive. And it might be that we feel that these are the values that are important to us because we've been put under pressure about it. And then 3 months or 4 months later, we're thinking, do you know what, actually, I really value this thing over here. It might be we need to be a bit more fluid. But I think getting to this why is really important, because you could almost crystallize that in a single word. And if any of us could find the one word at the heart of us that really kind of sums up what we're about and why we do what we do, then I think everything else can be built around that. But maybe in the world of personal branding, we need to be a little bit more flexible about values. I don't know, it depends on how many values you feel we need to have. You know, again, I sometimes try and limit it to somewhere around 3, 4, maybe 5 at the most. But maybe for a personal brand, actually, you probably want to tell the story using 10 or 12 values, but it could be that they're built around these 5 big value personality traits that I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, you know, I've done branding exercises, you know, with small, medium, and large size corporations and with individuals, and you know, there is a different way of looking at, you know, the whys and the values, and I'm a firm believer that, you know, you shouldn't have many more than 3 or 4 values, because if everything's in bold, there's nothing's in bold. So, you know, you can't be everything to everybody. You end up being nothing to nobody. So, you know, then they have to be genuine. They have to be authentic. But when I do sort of work on a personal level, I always say, if they built a statue of you now, what would it say underneath it? And if they built a statue of you in 10 years' time, what would you want it to say underneath it? And I think those are the things that, you know, what do people, because, you know, the brand really is only as strong as what somebody says about you when you're not in the room. And that's when you get the truth. You know, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. And then he leaves the room and go, what an idiot he is, by the way. You know, it's those sort of things. So when you're looking at personal brands, you know, it's for me, it's a simple exercise. You know, if you had a statue built about you today, what would it say underneath it? What would be the 3 key words? And if you wanted to build one in 10 years' time, what would it say then underneath? Because, you know, where you are today and where you want to get to tomorrow could be 2 different things. And you may need to find a hybrid between the 2 in terms of what your values are. But the key thing to all of these things, for me anyway, going forward, is that when you actually, and values are difficult, you're right, values are difficult to talk about because they're an emotion. And we find feelings and emotions difficult to talk about. You know, if you're going to go and buy something, you say, well, you're going to buy that? Well, I'm not going to buy it. It just doesn't feel right. Well, what does that mean? Well, I can't tell you. It just doesn't feel right, because we can't talk from that side. We find it difficult to talk from that side of the brain when we talk about feelings. And that's why, you know, it's probably easier from a business and a company perspective to put values down. But when you're talking on a personal level, it's a little bit more difficult. And that's why it's, you know, I use the example that I use. But I think it's just as important from a personal brand and from a business brand to have those values. But the key thing to it, there's no point having values unless you stick to them when the pressure's on. And whether you consistently deliver that.
There's, I don't know whether you agree that there are many companies out there that still really struggle with their values. I went into one company not so long ago, and on the wall they had our company values. So I started to read them. I said, oh, they're nice. And then the managing director sort of whispered to me, and he went, we copied those from somebody else. Then, you know, we thought they were good, so we put them. And I was shocked. So do you both find that companies still struggle with their own values?
Yeah, it's a tick box exercise.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous, that is. I mean, I do think that a lot of companies use the same words, and this is the problem with kind of, we crystallize it down to just a few single words, and then it's kind of like, well, we want to be innovative, we want to be trustworthy, we want to be, I don't know, and when I develop values for brands, for businesses, or for products or services, I'm always looking for, again, it's those authentic truths. They come from the things that really, really matter to us as a business. So hopefully they're not, they clearly can't be borrowed from someone else because we thought they sounded right. They've got to come from within the business. They've got to be the people within the business. So if it's your personal brand, trying to keep it on topic here, then it's got to be you, which is why I say go out there and ask others, because sometimes we don't always see ourselves the way that we want or that others see us, and we need to know how we're coming across. But you've got to find those words that do summarize, what you stand for. I just want to quickly say, Julian, you just reminded me, just talking about it the way you did just then. I was listening to Thought for the Day today. I don't know if you listen to Radio 4, but Thought for the Day, the guy who was talking on there, he was speaking about, I think it was a Jewish woman. Now, I don't know, I didn't catch it all. I didn't know all the details. I think it was a Jewish woman. She was a nurse, or German woman. She was a nurse in the time of the Second World War. And she was actually put to death by the Nazis because of the work that she was doing to stand out against the way in which people in her country were being treated at that time. And the night before, sorry, I don't know all the details, but the night before she was put to death, the chap talking to her said, "You'll be remembered as a martyr." She said, "I don't want to be remembered as a martyr. I want to be remembered as a nurse who was trying to do the right thing." And I thought, it just picks up on what you were saying, Julian. I thought that was a really powerful story. It was kind of like if there was a statue built about her, she was clear. She didn't want to be thought of as a martyr for some particular cause. She just simply was a nurse wanting to do the right thing. And she was very comfortable in who she was, to the point at which she accepted death because that was so important to her.
She believed in it so much.
Yeah. It's quite powerful. Have a listen to it and you'll understand more as you're filling the gaps, because I've not really said it all properly there.
Yeah.
But because I think fundamentally she'd be very well aware of her why. And why do we get up in the mornings? Why do we get out of bed? Why should anyone care about you? Why should anybody? Those are the fundamental things for it. And whether you're a personal brand or you're a business, when I do my own consultancy, I go into businesses and say, tell me what your why is, and they'll tell them to make a profit. We've got to make a profit. No, that's not your why. That's an end result. That's a byproduct of what you do. What is the why? Why did you start this business? Why did you start it? What was the thing that ticked it in the back of your mind? Why was that? And how did your personality form that business? Because again, when you're looking at personal brands and working within small to medium-sized enterprises or with entrepreneurs, they're very good at the beginning. And the reason they're very good at the beginning is that they're working on their business. Then they open the doors and they start trading. They start working in their business. They stop working on it. So all they're doing then is just perpetuating the idea that they started with in the first instance, which may not have been 100% correct. So they just keep turning the wheel, keep turning the wheel, keep turning the wheel, keep turning the wheel. There's no strategic, there's no understanding, there's no evaluation. So they're definitely working in their business and not on their business. So for me, the likes of when I go in there and I sit down and I assess it, they say, what are you going to do for me? I'm not going to do anything for you at the moment. It's going to take me a week to fully understand you as a person, you as your products, whatever your services, how you interact, what are you saying, how are you saying it, how do you look, how do you feel, how do you walk, how do you talk? And to get all of that information out, then we can start to understand exactly where you are and what you need to do. And they're the fundamental things. Then you can pull values out of that, because otherwise, as you quite rightly said, people say, oh, we've got a business. We've got to have a values document. We've got a customer charter. Well, do me a favor, go on and copy that customer charter, bring it across. I'll sign the bottom of it. We're done, aren't we? Yeah. They're business managers and owners who are so focused on profit and product. It's unbelievable, because they haven't really got the time to start looking at the fundamentals, because the bottom line is people do business with people. Human to human connections are the heart and soul of any business. So
this is what went wrong with Tesco's in recent years. So they basically just forgot what they stood for, what their fundamental promise was, which is kind of quality products at a good price. And they were under pressure, I guess, during the recession to find profit from anywhere. And what they ended up doing was squeezing their suppliers and not giving the customer the best product anymore. And the result became, I think, what was it? Their strapline was every little helps, and it became every little helps Tesco. And they fundamentally forgot, because money became the driving factor, what they were in business for, and the why, if you like.
No, exactly. Sorry, go on.
A quick question then to both of you. Do you think, going back to personal branding then, that's a good exercise for somebody to actually sit there and just, A4 sheet and a pen and write down, what they believe their values are and what they stand for, and actually pin that piece of paper somewhere?
100%. 100%, because for me, the exercise for me when we do these things is what's your purpose, cause, or belief? What is your why? Start with the end in mind. Okay, you've got your product and service, but how do you as a person make people feel? And it goes back to what I'm saying. If they build a statue now or 10 years time, what would it say? What impact do you have on people? And then you can start to put together who you are, and then you can look at other things. Then obviously you've got to keep your story subtle. It's not a sales pitch. And you can look at your other bits and pieces. And what's your unfair advantage? What's your unique value proposition? How do you come about solving the problems that people have got within your area with the passion that you do? So yeah, for me, you sit down and you write down all of the reasons why you started your business and what you believe in, and you get them down on a piece of. Yeah.
Sorry, Julian. So then again, once they've done that exercise, then to be really true to your values, would they turn down work or would they turn down jobs because of their values?
And I think you can approach anything. You can approach anything driven by the brand that you are. So. I'm not a football coach, but if I got offered a job as a football coach, would that be good for my personal brand? I don't know. But I think it would certainly put me on a stage. And then it's up to me, kind of, what is the message I want people to hear while I'm on that stage? I don't know, it's a frivolous example, but the point is that it's all about how you approach it, how you shape your answer to the question that says something about who you are, not so much the context itself. It's the way you shape your reaction within that context that shapes your personal brand.
Good.
But the big problem, I think, Julie, a lot of people have when they start business, their brushes are far too wide. And they're trying to, because you need money, you need to get yourself going. You start your business here, and all of a sudden you just, I've got to try and get money, so I've got to go over here, and I've got to start doing this, and I've got to start doing that, and what do I do next? I can't, and all of, for me, there's four. If you're looking at a business or a personal brand, there's 4 key areas you need to look at. First of all, you need to be passionate about what you're going to do. Okay, that's fundamentally the beginning. If you've got to work on a Monday morning and you don't want to be there, you're in the wrong job. If you don't like Monday mornings, you're in the wrong job. You're doing something you don't like doing. You've got to be passionate. You've got to create your own niche. You've got to have your own little niche, because otherwise, as a small business, how are you going to attack some of these bigger boys? Have your own niche. You've got to solve a problem. You've either got to solve a problem or provide an experience. And finally, you've got to make it scalable. Because ultimately, if you're just doing one thing and you can only do this and it's going to take all your time and you can only charge £5 for it, it's a great idea, but that sounds to me like a hobby. It doesn't sound to me like a business. So you've got to be passionate. You've got to create a niche, solve a problem, or provide an experience and make it scalable. Those are the 4 key areas I would say when people are saying, I've got a business idea. This is what I want to do. Because otherwise, fundamentally, where's it going to go and how are you going to do it? So, and your personal brand then will entwine through those 4 things. And once you get that personal brand and your character and your flavor and everything else through that, you can then keep telling your story in a way that resonates with people, and you will start to attract like-minded people. Otherwise, you'll start doing jobs that you shouldn't be doing, and you're doing it for the cash. You lose your sight, you lose where you're going, you lose everything else, and that's it. I can give this analogy in here because I presume this is predominantly a UK-based blab. But your value should be like Blackpool Rock, okay? No matter where you crack that rock, you can read Blackpool. And it should be exactly the same for your values. Your values should be like Blackpool Rock. No matter where they crack you or whatever point they put pressure on you, you should be able to see your values. And that's why, for me, my values are always engage, inspire, and empower. I'm engaging people to inspire them to do what empowers them, to inspire them to do what they want to do. It's a bit of a mouthful, but there's a lot of words in there. But that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to engage, empower, and inspire people to do what inspires them. And that's my why.
Gillian, I think you're doing that very well on this blab.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right,
I've got to go now.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up now. So I'm just checking, see if there's any more questions. A couple of other people did try to get on, actually, but they didn't have luck. So I don't know what happened there. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, Mark, where can they do that? What's the best way to contact you? I'll type it.
Well, I mean, I think my picture shows my name with @MarkWing. That's my Twitter handle, so that's a very easy way to get hold of me. You can all see that on the screen. If you want to email me, I'm MarkWing, as written there, but with the at the other end, and then @interrelated. And interrelated has got 2 R's. .co.uk.
Interrelated. That's 2 R's, E-L. What's after? Thank you. A-T-E-D. Lovely. .co.uk.
.co.uk, yeah.
Wonderful.
As a wise old owl once said.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. Oh, that's a brilliant blab, Mark. Thank you so much for joining. And thanks, Julian, for popping in as well. So did you enjoy it, Mark?
I did very much. Thank you for inviting me, Julie. I mean, I was a bit nervous coming on, but I've got so many friends on here. It's lovely to know they're all there.
That's great. We'll have another one soon. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining. If you have any questions to Mark, contact him on Twitter or markwing @interrelated.co.uk. Bye, everybody. Take care. Bye.